New York in the 1600s wasn't New York at all. It was New Amsterdam, a rough Dutch trading post clinging to the southern tip of Manhattan Island, home to barely 1,500 souls speaking 18 different languages, where beaver pelts were currency, where the local Native Americans knew the land better than any colonist, and where a wooden wall built for defense would eventually give its name to the world's most famous financial street. This was the frontier of the Dutch Empire, 3,000 miles from Amsterdam, a place where fortunes could be made in the fur trade, but where survival itself was never guaranteed. The settlement was crude, chaotic, and extraordinarily diverse, a polyglot community of Dutch, English, French, German, Swedish, African, and Jewish settlers, trying to carve out lives in a landscape that had belonged to the Lenape people for thousands of years. Today, advanced AI technology allows us to transform period maps, sketches, and archaeological evidence into photorealistic recreations, bringing this lost world back to life. Join me as we step into the New Amsterdam our ancestors once knew, a tiny colonial outpost that would eventually become the greatest city on Earth. The harbor, where Manhattan begins. Stand at the southern tip of Manhattan in 1660, and you're looking at New Amsterdam, a settlement of about 1,500 people clustered around the protected harbor where the Hudson and East Rivers meet the Atlantic. The location is perfect for trade, a deep natural harbor, rivers that penetrate deep into the interior, and the island itself offering protection and access. But this isn't the gleaming metropolis of later centuries. It's a frontier town of wooden houses, dirt streets, and a massive stone fort, Fort Amsterdam, squatting near the water's edge. The fort's walls are thick, its cannons point toward the harbor, ready to defend against English, French, or Spanish attack. Inside are the colony's administrative offices, the Dutch Reformed Church, and the governor's residence. Look at the harbor itself. Ships from the Dutch West India Company arrive with supplies, manufactured goods, and new settlers. They leave laden with beaver pelts, the colony's primary export, and the whole reason New Amsterdam exists. The beaver fur trade is incredibly lucrative. European hat makers will pay premium prices for North American beaver pelts, which make superior felt for the fashionable broad-brimmed hats worn across Europe. Watch the ships unload. Among the cargo are enslaved Africans, brought by the Dutch West India Company to labor in the colony. By 1660, about 20% of New Amsterdam's population is of African descent, some enslaved, some half-free with limited rights, a few fully free. They work on company farms, build fortifications, load ships, and provide essential labor that makes the colony function. Their presence creates a complex racial dynamic that will shape New York's history for centuries. The waterfront is crude but busy. Wharves stretch into the water, mostly simple wooden structures. Small boats ferry goods and people. The beach is littered with ship's equipment, barrels, construction materials. The smell is salt water, tar, fish, and the ever-present stench of human and animal waste that flows into the harbor untreated. The Lenape, the Native Americans who've inhabited this region for millennia, still come to trade. They bring furs, corn, and knowledge of the land. The Dutch bring metal tools, cloth, glass beads, and alcohol. The relationship is complex, sometimes cooperative, often exploitative, occasionally violent. The Lenape know they're being displaced, their hunting grounds taken, their numbers decimated by European diseases against which they have no immunity. The most famous transaction in New York history supposedly happened in 1626, when Peter Minuit, the colony's director, purchased Manhattan Island from the Lenape for goods worth 60 guilders, often stated as $24 in later retellings. But this transaction is more myth than reality. The Lenape didn't have European concepts of land ownership. They likely thought they were granting hunting and trading rights, not permanently ceding their homeland. It was a fundamental misunderstanding that would have tragic consequences. The streets, chaos and diversity. Walk up from the harbor into the settlement itself, and you're navigating streets that are barely streets at all. They're dirt paths, muddy in rain, dusty in dry weather, churned by pigs, cattle, and horses that roam freely. There's no urban planning. Houses are built wherever space exists, creating an irregular maze that reflects the settlement's haphazard growth. The buildings are distinctively Dutch, step-gabled houses with brick or wood construction, steeply pitched roofs to shed snow and rain. But many are crude, hastily built structures that barely keep out the winter cold. Chimneys smoke constantly as residents burn firewood to cook and stay warm. Fire is a constant threat in this wooden town, and several devastating fires will sweep through New Amsterdam's history. The diversity is stunning for such a small settlement. In 1643, a French Jesuit priest noted that 18 languages were spoken in New Amsterdam. You'll hear Dutch, English, French, German, Swedish, various African languages, Hebrew, and indigenous languages. Settlers have come from across Europe and Africa, creating a polyglot community that's chaotic but remarkably tolerant by 17th century standards. Religious diversity mirrors linguistic variety. The Dutch Reformed Church is official, but Lutherans, Jews, Quakers, and Catholics all live here, though not always with equal rights. In 1654, when 23 Jewish refugees from Brazil arrived, Governor Peter Stuyvesant wanted to expel them, but the Dutch West India Company overruled him, allowing them to stay. Religious tolerance isn't based on principle, but on practical economics. The colony needs settlers, and it can't afford to be choosy. Walk past the houses, and you'll notice taverns everywhere. New Amsterdam has a shocking number of drinking establishments for its size, perhaps one for every 50 residents. Beer and spirits flow freely, creating a reputation for drunkenness that troubles the authorities but continues nonetheless. Taverns serve as social centers, meeting places, and sites of business negotiation as essential to colonial life as churches and markets. The town's northern boundary is marked by a wooden wall built in 1653 to protect against potential English invasion and Native American attack. It runs roughly east-west across the island at what's now Wall Street, creating a barrier between the settled area and the wild land beyond. The wall is more psychological than practical. It wouldn't stop a determined attack, but it defines the limits of Dutch control. Beyond the wall lies farmland, worked by both free farmers and enslaved laborers. The Dutch West India Company owns substantial lands, worked by company slaves and producing food for the settlement. Individual colonists have also established boweries, farms carved from forest and marsh. The most famous will give its name to a future neighborhood, the Bowery. The market, commerce and survival. The market area near the East River is where New Amsterdam feeds itself and conducts daily commerce. It's not a grand marketplace, but an open space where farmers, traders, and merchants gather. Lenape vendors bring fish, oysters from the incredible beds in the harbor, corn, squash, and beans. Dutch farmers offer European vegetables and grains. Butchers sell meat from domesticated animals. The currency situation is chaotic. Dutch guilders circulate but are scarce. English pounds, Spanish reals, even wampum, shell beads that the Lenape use for ceremonial purposes, all serve as money. Beaver pelts are so valuable, they function as currency for large transactions. The lack of standardized currency reflects the colony's frontier status and its integration into multiple trading networks. Watch the transactions. Haggling is intense, conducted in multiple languages with generous use of hand gestures. Trust is essential because legal enforcement is weak. A merchant's reputation is everything. Cheat someone and word spreads quickly through the small community, destroying your business. The market reveals the colony's dependence on trade with both Europe and Native Americans. The settlers can't yet produce everything they need. Tools, cloth, luxury goods, even some food comes from Amsterdam. Without regular ships, the colony would struggle. Without trade with the Lenape, it would collapse entirely. Food is a mix of Dutch traditions and American adaptations. Settlers eat familiar foods like bread, cheese, and herring when available. But they've adopted corn from the Lenape, learning to make dishes that will become American staples. Game is abundant. Deer, wild turkey, passenger pigeons in flocks so vast they darken the sky. The waters teem with fish and oysters. Despite being a frontier settlement, food is generally plentiful for those who can hunt, fish, or afford to buy. But there's no romantic abundance here. Winters are brutal, far colder than anything in the Netherlands. Storage is primitive. Spoilage is common. Occasional food shortages threaten the settlement when ships are delayed or harvests fail. Life is precarious in ways difficult for modern people to grasp. The Lenape, the forgotten people. Throughout New Amsterdam's history, the Lenape presence shapes everything, yet is rarely acknowledged by the colonists. The Lenape have lived on Manhattan for thousands of years, calling it Mannahatta, Island of Many Hills. They're sophisticated people with complex societies, trade networks stretching across the region, and deep knowledge of the land and waters. The Dutch arrival brings catastrophe. European diseases, smallpox, measles, typhus, devastate Lenape populations who have no immunity. Entire villages die. Survivors face displacement as Dutch settlers claim more land. The fur trade disrupts traditional economies and creates dependencies. Alcohol destroys communities and individuals. Violence erupts periodically. In 1643, Kieft's War, named for Governor Willem Kieft, sees brutal fighting including a massacre of Lenape refugees who'd sought protection near New Amsterdam. The Dutch attack at night, killing men, women, and children, an atrocity that shocks even some colonists. The war nearly destroys the colony before peace is negotiated. By 1660, the Lenape population around New Amsterdam has declined catastrophically. Those who remain are marginalized, pushed to the periphery, their land taken, their way of life disappearing. Within another century, they'll be almost entirely gone from the region, killed by disease, displaced by settlement, or absorbed into other communities. The tragic irony is that without Lenape knowledge, the Dutch colony couldn't have survived its early years. The Lenape taught settlers which crops to plant, where to hunt and fish, how to navigate the waters and forests. They traded furs that made the colony profitable. Yet the settlers repaid this help with displacement, violence, and cultural destruction. The transformation from outpost to metropolis. In 1660, New Amsterdam is a crude frontier settlement that might not survive. By 1700, now as New York, it's a thriving port of over 5,000 people. By 1800, it's approaching 60,000. By 1900, it's the largest city in America with over 3 million residents. The transformation from Dutch trading post to global metropolis is one of history's most dramatic urban stories. What made this possible? Location, primarily. The harbor is among the world's finest, and the Hudson River provides access deep into the continent. But also, the foundation laid in the Dutch period. Religious tolerance, ethnic diversity, commercial focus, and pragmatic flexibility. These characteristics, established in the 1600s, become defining features of New York City. Walk Manhattan today, and you'll still see echoes of New Amsterdam. Wall Street follows the Wooden Walls path. Broadway follows an old Lenape trail that the Dutch called Herenstraat. The Bowery preserves the Dutch word for farm. Pearl Street remembers the oyster shells that lined the shore, the ethnic diversity, the commercial energy, the slightly chaotic character, all trace back to the frontier settlement on the harbor. but much is lost. The Lenape presence is reduced to place names. The Dutch language disappeared by the early 1800s. The original buildings are all gone, replaced multiple times as the city grew and modernized. Even the geography changed. Landfill extended the island's shoreline, marshes were drained, hills were leveled. The Mannahatta the Lenape knew is buried under asphalt and skyscrapers. Understanding New Amsterdam helps us grasp New York's DNA. This was never a planned, orderly settlement like Boston or Philadelphia. It was chaotic from the start, diverse, commercial, slightly disreputable, focused on making money rather than creating a perfect society. Those characteristics, formed in the 1600s, persist today. The city's diversity, often celebrated as a modern achievement, has roots in New Amsterdam's 18 languages and multiple religions. The commercial focus, the sense that anything can be bought or sold, comes from the Dutch trading post mentality. The famous New York attitude, brash and fast-paced, reflects frontier pragmatism refined over centuries. But we must also remember the costs: the Lenape displaced and destroyed, the enslaved Africans whose labor built colonial prosperity, the environmental transformation that eliminated ancient ecosystems. New York's greatness rests on foundations that include both remarkable achievements and terrible injustices. This was New Amsterdam in the 1600s, a tiny Dutch outpost that became the greatest city on Earth. If you enjoyed this step back in time, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss where we're going next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.